And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is rest. So we get so busy in the hustle and bustle of our lives that we neglect self-care oftentimes. And part of that is rest. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can incorporate rest as part of a daily routine. It doesn't have to be a big nap. It doesn't have to be, although it's great to get to bed at a certain time, it doesn't have to necessarily be that. There are ways that we can conduct our days that are restful or more restful anyway. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, 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 and good morning. Good morning to you, Rosalind, and to everybody else who's joining us. It's so good to be here with you this morning. And today we're talking about rest, because lots of us are navigating busy schedules, lots to do, lots of demands, and what often gets lost in the shuffle is our own self-care, our own well-being. And we're going to talk about how to manage that, because truly, I'm experiencing this more and more deeply. Truly, franticness is a state of mind. So I often have people scheduled back to back from morning to evening. And I could be looking at those schedules. I'm using my own example just to let you know that it's manageable, that we can manage this. So I notice that by approaching my day. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. So good to have you joining us. We're talking about rest today. So, and right now, just that franticness is a state of mind. Overwhelm is a state of mind. And what I notice, for instance, when I'm approaching a day that's booked back to back, is that I approach that day with the intention of spaciousness. And it's amazing what happens that is kind of inexplicable. In that context of spaciousness, people sometimes cancel the appointment, need to reschedule. People end up having to start late or end early. It's really quite remarkable. And the attitude that we take toward the multitude of things that are on our agenda impacts our experience of those things and of that day. So if we look at a week, forget about just a day, but if we look at a week and say, oh my gosh, I have everything, everything is back to back to back. It's going to be a grueling, crazy week. Listen to how we are programming ourselves, how we are orienting ourselves to create and perpetuate a state of overwhelm. So what if instead, and it always comes back to presence, folks, it always comes back to presence. What if instead we allow ourselves to be present? I know I have this series of things scheduled, and I can just be present to those things as I'm there. That state of presence makes all the difference in the world. And I think I already said this week, but I just came back just over a week ago from a month traveling by car with my cat out to California and back. And I drove 7.5 to 11.5 hour days, or 11-hour days. And there was only one time that I became impatient. So it gave me some insight into what is this experience of urgency or driving or impatience, and like impatient to get everything done. It was when I was focusing on getting where I wanted to be, like pushing to be there instead of being where I was. And when I allowed myself to be present in the car, seeing this vista of changing scenery, I had a sense of ease and quietude, and time disappeared. There was no pressure. There was no pushing. There was just being present to what was there. And the second time was when it's not that I was impatient, but I noticed when I got close to home that I wasn't paying attention to the scenery in the same way, because I had this idea that I already knew what it was, which wasn't true, by the way. And when I brought myself back to presence, whatever that disconnection was disappeared, and there was a greater sense of ease, and there was a restfulness in that. So when we are present, we're better modulating our nervous system. We're being more respectful of the need to breathe, for example. And one of the ways that we can give ourselves rest, even in the midst of a busy day, is when we have a minute to just sit and breathe, to give ourselves the opportunity maybe to close our eyes for a minute or two, to take a deep breath, to feel our bodies, to relax and smooth out the jaggedness of our nervous system. And it may seem counterintuitive to slow down in order to be able to accomplish more. I don't like the whole productivity mindset gets into being a bit of a machine. So I kind of try to move around the traditional words for being productive, being efficient, because usually those kinds of mindsets are what get us into this state of being mechanical and disconnected and in overwhelm. And though it may seem paradoxical, to be able to slow down and be present gives us an opportunity to be more responsive, more focused, more attentive to what the moment is calling for. So I said more focused. It allows us to be more focused and see the big picture kind of all at the same time. It allows us to be more responsive. It allows us to listen more clearly. And part of that listening is listening to ourselves. Not just listening to our body and how we're feeling, but to listen also to the internal dialogue. Because oftentimes we have an internal dialogue that is running and running and running, and we don't even hear it. It's playing sort of under the radar. It's programming and messaging, and we're not even present to what that messaging is. I don't know if you've ever noticed that this phenomena. I actually have had moments where I kind of quiet myself and I notice that there's this whole thing going on under there that I didn't even hear, that I'm not even present to, that I'm not even orchestrating, not consciously. Like this whole conversation, all this jabber going on, and it's shocking to recognize it, to allow yourself to hear it. I don't think I'm alone in that phenomena. I'm going to guess that I'm not. I haven't really explored that with others to find out if there's this running dialogue or monologue going on underneath the surface, that it's always there, so we often just don't even hear it. But I invite you to listen more deeply, just to be present, and then notice if there's something going on that you hadn't recognized. Good morning, Kimberly. Welcome. It's so good to have you here with us. It's been a while. We are talking about rest. And this topic became something much more on my radar when I visited, and actually before I visited, but even more when I visited, a friend whom I've not seen for 35 years. Scary to be able to say that even, right? But she has long haul COVID, and her system is so sensitive that she has to be very, very, very tuned in to her energy. And rest is something that she has learned to respect as a high art form, I think. I don't know if she would say it was a high art form, but I think that her awareness around rest is much more deeply cultivated than most of ours. And the thing she said to me in coming home from my trip was, what I can say to you is rest. What I can recommend to you is rest. And of course, I'm not paying attention to that. And today it hit me, because today I just was whooped. I just was laid out, and after my first week back. And so it made me think of this notion of rest, and how, in truth, we can incorporate rest. It doesn't have to be something where we take a half-hour nap or a 2-hour nap, or where we go to bed at a certain time, although maybe all those things could be very helpful. But that we can conduct ourselves in a restful way. that when we start feeling our system getting all amped up and tense and constricted, we can take the moment to release and relax. And that in itself is nurturing and restful. We can take a minute, a literal minute, and close our eyes and breathe into our belly and relax our shoulders and calm our minds. We can take a moment for silence. And calm all the internal noise. And then from that space of greater presence, by necessity, it's going to bring us more present. From that space of greater presence, then we can resume our activity. Our nervous system gets all tweaked. It gets all tuned up. And that has all kinds of ramifications for us. There's a cost to driving and pushing and the resistance that we create when we conceptualize things in a way that we feel overwhelmed. I just have to get through this. I just have to get through this. I can tell you that there have been many days in my life that I had pushed to say, I just need to get through the day. And I don't think I'm alone in that. But what if instead of, I just need to get through this, what if instead I can just be where I am in the moment? And that brings me to the exhaustion that so many of us feel in the face of grief and trauma. I have multiple people in my life who have had deep losses lately through death. And when we think about death and grieving, well, this is a topic for another day, I think, but it can be exhausting because it's so confusing and there's such a panoply of emotions, such a cascade of often conflicting emotions. And how do I be? How do I be? And when we allow ourselves to step outside of the story of how we should be, how we should be responding, to noticing what's there. And it could be feeling really crazy and manic because I should be sad, but I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling happy in this moment. And then the next moment, I'm just overcome by grief. We tend to make stories about it. We tend to try to constrain and restrict and control ourselves around our grief and around other emotions. And the biggest observation, recommendation that I can surmise from my observations, my experiences so far, is to be where you are when you're there. And especially with grieving, there are moments where you're just going to be overcome with grief. And there are other moments where the loss isn't present at all. And the fear that we often have is that if we let go of the grief, we will forget the being of the dear one who has been lost. And that somehow not feeling grief in every moment is a betrayal of that relationship or of that being. And it's just not true. It's just not true. Kimberly says, I've been experienced this. It's going to be a year. My auntie took her last breath, holding my hand. And I've been trying to, so much on my mind. I'll bet, Kimberly. And the thing is to allow yourself the grace, because it's exhausting. It can be exhausting. It's exhausting enough to have that emotional upheaval and confusion. It's like, here, somebody was here and now they're gone. And where the hell did they go? It's just, it's confusing. It's baffling. We don't know how to integrate this. It's bringing up tears even, because it's so deeply confusing. And we want to understand it. And we make up all kinds of stories. And in one moment, we're just devastated by the loss. And the next moment, we're laughing at a memory that just was so funny with this being. And I say being because several of the people that I'm connected with have lost beloved four-legged friends. And or I still can be thinking about losing Maggie, my beautiful, crazy bird that I had the gift of for a while. And this whole death thing, it just doesn't make any sense. And so that's confusing enough. And then all the emotions. And we don't have to stay sad to be honoring someone who's passed. And there will be moments when we are. Rosalind says, Maggie Pooh. I know. Some of the replays I think had Maggie present in them. Boy, she was a personality, wasn't she? Oh my gosh. She was, I adored her, and she was a torturer. She was a torturer. Oh, she was such a badness. and just such a bright light. So Kimberly says, yes, I know that is actually what has been going on. I know her spirit is alive, and I try to be patient with myself and remember all the beautiful things that we shared. Well, so here, part of the hardship around that is that you may not be allowing yourself to feel the grief when you feel it. You may be feeling grief and trying to mitigate it or resist it or contain it by telling yourself all the beautiful things. But when you're sad, be sad, and then it passes. I promise you, when you're sad, be sad. And if you're really being sad, without judging it, without trying to contain it or restrict it or control it, then it'll pass. And then something else will arise. And then you'll get sad again. And then that'll pass. And if you can just allow that, Kimberly says, yes, indeed. If you can just allow that, you're honoring your process. The sadness is energy. The love is energy. All the different emotions are energy. And we're talking about rest. So sometimes you just want to curl up and hide away And the thing is that if we can allow ourselves to do that, to curl up and hide away without making a story about it, without justifying it, without fighting it, then there's a point at which we say, I'm done curling up and hiding away. It's so much the stories that we have about things that suck our energy, that create this resistance, that exhaust us. When we fight being how we are, when we judge it, when we resist it, we can be there, be in it. Don't perpetuate it, just be in it, present to it, let it move. It's remarkable how, when we don't judge, when we just allow, when we don't create the resistance that judging creates, there's a freeing up of the energy to move. And the one thing that we can recognize is that change is constant. We sometimes get ourselves caught in this situation where we are damming that energy. You know, we're putting up a dam that's restricting that energy. And that's when we get exhausted. It takes so much energy to do that. It takes so much energy to be in denial. And the more we can regulate our energy, and I know that word regulate sounds like a controlling word. That's not the intention. It's not that we impose regulation on it, but that we respond to its movement, and that is self-regulating. The more respectful we are to the flow of our energy, the more restful our experience is going to be. It's amazing how big a transformation it is for human beings to just be where we are when we're there. So many of us are so busy being someplace else when we're here. When I'm here, I want to be there. When I'm there, I want to be here. And so I'm never where I am. The more we can be where we are, the less energy we're going to be expending. And that means emotionally, physically, experientially, all of it. So again, it always comes back to presence. And with that, I'm going to call it a day and a week, the first week back. And I just am so grateful to all of you for participating and for your willingness to be exploring new ways of being, thinking, perceiving. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I wish you a wonderful and restful weekend.